So, panel, you're lucky that you can see the questions. and basically what we'll do is we'll just ask them as they come up. So apologise if they're sort of in a little bit of a random manner, but we will take as many as we can from the audience. So first one, Sophie and Scott, this one is directed to you. How does the current range, as in miles on one charge, limit the possibilities of electric trucks to deliver over long distances? Sophie, do you want to start? Because I know you spoke about your fleet, which you're very proud of.
Yes. I think the question more or less is also little stands the answer. That is the limit we have with the electric trucks right now. So we are focusing on trying to find the right solution, matching the customer to the lane and to the truck. We have a close dialogue with the customers because in some location we actually have the opportunity of charging the truck while loading the truck at the customer side. So it is a big element of collaboration in that side to make sure that we get the best impact of that specific truck in that specific location. So it's about making it work, and it's very much about the dialogue, because we cannot change it from one side to another in a second. We need to make sure that the infrastructure and the timing is there. But that is definitely the limit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a similar for the units. It's always about the infrastructure and where and how the trucks and units get charged.
Yeah, and from what you're saying, you're working with what you have.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Right. Let's go to the next one. At DFDS, do you see an opportunity to shift a substantial volume of road transport to intermodal rail routes, Sophie?
Yes, I know from the presentation I focused a lot on the ships and the trucks, but we do have intermodal and rail as part of our services. So we do have solutions where we, for example, put the goods on vessels in Turkey. We sail them to Italy, and then we put them on rail up to the middle of Europe. So intermodal and the rail is also part of our solutions, and we use that also from a sustainability perspective, figuring out how do we design the most efficient route of goods transport. So it is part of our thinking when we do the planning of the different routes.
Okay. Andrew, we're going to jump so that you can answer this one, because it's has Sadel calculated the CO2 emissions between the running of a smaller warehouse facility and the larger facility you're building, so the Magnavale Eastern one?
Yes, we have. I don't know the CO2 emissions offhand because they're quite large numbers, but on an energy scale, it would run against an average kind of smaller warehouse about 50% of the energy usage per pallet space. So it actually fits with the Paris Accord, as you were saying earlier. So this is where we see the real changes. We reduced our energy in our older kind of integral cold stores by 33% when we invested in them heavily. But on top of that, the new automation stores will be 50% more efficient than that.
Okay, and you spoke a lot about investment, and I just wondered, because there's substantial amounts you're talking about. How difficult was that to secure?
We lucky enough we've got a history of with the family office of raising large sums of finance, in particularly around real estate. So it is tough, but we try and remove that from Magnavale. So Magnavale can actually purely focus on the day-to-day operation and not have to worry about those types of things. So that's kind of one of my roles is looking at how we secure those. But obviously the market at the moment is difficult. But what you find is actually if it's responsible business, it's responsible and kind of driven by actual money returns rather than just trying to flip cash out, it's a lot easier to do it.
Okay. Here's one, Andrew, for you. Automation gives an increase in storage density. What type of benefits does this give in... Oh, it's gone. In running costs. There we go.
50% on...
Yeah, as you said. Yeah, okay. Sophie, we've got another one for you. And... you talked about the business case in the UK. How do you balance financial considerations and sustainability priorities?
What we try to do is to put a price on CO2. So we try to balance it out. It's definitely something that has been developing within the company. So to begin with, we just had as a qualitative factor, but now we're getting more and more quantitative into it. So we need to understand what is the potential CO2 reduction with an investment, how would it impact the overall company performance. We also see regulation coming in On the seaside, right now we see counting on the ETS. That would also be relevant for the roadside at a later stage. So now we have actually a quite specific number on CO2 impact and how that will drive costs. So that can also have an impact on financial investments. So if we can reduce CO2, it's actually a better business case. So we are getting in there. The next step will also to be include the human side of sustainability in a business case. So how do we impact health and safety? How do we impact other parts of the business when we do this?
Okay.
So we are getting the decision to be bigger in terms of the elements you need to take into consideration.
Okay. Scott, I want to bring you in at this case,
Yep.
because I know you spoke a lot about data and you emphasised just how important that is. In fact, I think you both did, you and Sophie. But I just wondered, is technology innovation, is it that will get us to where we need to go on decarbonisation, or is it going to take a change in attitudes, behaviours from businesses, and in particular, their customers as well?
It's a fair question. I mean, I think on the attitude side, there has to be a level of openness to other possibilities and options. And some of those things are a bit frustrating at times because we know how to do things that we do today. And these new options are all a bit foreign to all of us. So there has to be some openness on the attitude side. But I think the data is twofold. One is you need data to know where you are, because that's what lets you know what the possibility is on the savings, as Andrew mentioned. So you have to know where you are, which is one piece of the data. The other piece is you need to measure progress over time. Both of those things are both sides of the data. We have the technologies today to provide the data. It's being underutilized currently, though. That's my concern. And I don't think we'll get there until we all start getting more comfortable with the data and how we should use it to make better choices.
You said very clearly as well that you provide the customers with the data. Right. Is that just a standard thing? You're doing that whether they want it or not, or is it?
It depends on the customer. At times we can provide the data as sort of an option or an add-on as a service.
Yeah.
But some it's already wrapped into the solution. So it depends. Many times fresh food needs a certain amount of data because there may be a supplier that demands the data to understand what's happening with fresh food as it's being shipped across geographies. So it depends on customer as well as the solution being applied.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, why do you have your freezer temperature set at -28? Is this not inefficient?
We don't have them set at -28. Okay. We have it at -18, the same as everyone else. But it's a thing in the video. Basically, what we did was try and overspec the refrigeration system to ensure that it can go down to that temperature if it is required. What we wanted to do is make sure we have kind of no single points of failure to ensure that if a compressor does go down, we have two backups. We are enabled to actually carry on running. But also, with the longevity of the building, to ensure that if global changes do happen with temperatures and things like that, what we have is the ability to still cool it to -18, even when we have 45-degree summers, because I think everyone in the room with kind of standard cold stores and like ourselves, when it was at 45 degrees last summer for a considerable 42 degrees for actually quite a long period of time, everyone struggled to actually keep the temperatures at -18. So it's making sure that these buildings are around in 50, 60 years' time. We kind of that's to ensure of that.
Okay. And we heard something yesterday actually about bringing that temperature slightly higher anyway.
I'd absolutely love it.
Yeah, you would approve that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sophie, with electric trucks, what are the emissions associated with the manufacture of the trucks? Is it worse than diesel trucks because of the batteries?
If an electric truck is running on black electricity, it's definitely worse than a diesel truck. So that's also why on the slide, on the 97% in terms of green electricity, that is kind of the emission business case for the e-truck. That is for those to drive on green electricity. Otherwise, in the full value chain, it won't have a positive effect. Okay. So that's definitely, again, so we are aware of the production emissions as well and the impact of the battery, but if we can run them, when we can run them on green electricity, the overall business case on emissions are better. And I think for me, that's just the critical part of the full understanding of decarbonization, that is to include the full value chain. There are so many situations where you do sub-optimizing, where you do the sub-calculation, and then when you expand and have the full chain and the full view, you actually see that you make decisions that are worse than other solutions. So that's also going back to the transparency part. We need to understand the full scale, otherwise we cannot make the right decisions. Yeah.
Okay. Scott, Will a TRU always be separately powered, or will one electric engine power both traction and refrigeration in the future?
Always is a long time. I think that we want to reduce any parasites on the electric tractor, but is it possible? Yes, but also fuel cells are possible. Range extension has to be, we have to do some development there. So range extension, fuel cells, all of these things are possibilities that would allow the tractor to power everything in time. So it's very possible.
Okay. If you have any more questions, folks, please get them through to us. If not, I've got a couple more, I think, just from my notes. Something for all of you. What would you say to businesses in the room that, as we know, you know as well, have been through really tough economic times recently, and certainly in the past few years, they're reading increasingly sceptical signals from political leaders, and they're tempted to hold off making the changes and the investments in their business to make it more sustainable. Now, you all have made those major investments and you have made those changes. What would you say to some of our businesses today?
I'd say the transition's underway. The transition will happen. Maybe it happens at different timings from country to country, but the transition's happening. This industry's transforming, and it might do it at different cycles globally, but the transition's underway. And we see the value. There's ROI that also comes into this that none of us really talked about too much, but we know that there's also a great ROI story here.
Okay. It was interesting because I know, Sophie, you spoke about the trucks in the UK and those being still diesel and obviously not electric because of the massive difference in prices. So I just wondered if you could add to that question, please.
Yes, I think from my side, what I think is important to remember is there's always something you can do. It's about finding the right thing that makes sense just where you are and the operation you're looking into. Like I also said, we have different approaches and we do focus on different things depending on where in our business we are. If I take an example from the ferry side, we have many freight ferries. We have a few passenger ferries, and on a passenger ferry, it's extremely important to have focus on waste handling and reducing plastics. That's not a big part of our normal operation for the freight side. So it's about figuring out what is the sweet spot for the customers in that situation and for the operation that you run, and then focus on that and understanding that there is no solution that will fit all in every place, because we did have different prices. We have different infrastructure, different customers. So figuring out what is the sweet spot, because there is always something you can do to improve. And I think that's the main mindset that you need to have.
Okay.
Because then it will happen.
Okay. Andrew, how will you standardise pallet input across your customers?
Ultimately, we won't. Customers are kind of ultimately need to do what they need to do for themselves to maximise their returns and maximise their efficiency. What we've done is make sure our cold store has got the right overhangs, the right overheights, that it can take pallets up to 2.25, make sure it can take 1.5 ton pallets in if required, and make sure it has got the right overhangs. But also for kind of really ugly pallets, we also have a manual store next door that can handle them. So that's why we try to differentiate ourselves, that we can't just handle the kind of standard 1.6 perfect pallets that retail ready. That's what we've made to ensure that we can't just accommodate. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll be honest on that one. I didn't know what you were talking about.
I don't either, so it's quite easy.
I promise I did follow. And I get that you're saying you can cope with anybody.
Yeah.
Basically,
That's basically it, yeah.
Right, brilliant, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, panel, how do you see the potential of a fully green grid in the UK? It's kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, weren't we? But let's end on this one then.
Not for a long time.
Okay.
I think is ultimately green energy has to happen, but the investment that's required to happen, that I don't see where it comes from. I don't see where the government gets its money from to do it. And as we know, with everything that's changing, that things aren't happening quickly. So as much as green energy is brilliant and it has to happen, it's still trying to find that mixture, because it isn't always sunny, it isn't always windy, particularly in this country. And we've seen it with the likes of Germany trying to go 100% renewable too early. It's actually caused them quite a lot of issues. So it is finding the right timing, the right mixture, and trying to take things forward at the correct pace, rather than just making knee-jerk reactions, which I think we can all do sometimes.
Okay. Scott?
I would say that investment's definitely needed. Maybe PPAs are another avenue that could be expanded in the UK to accelerate this from on the private side. So I think that's definitely a possibility, and we've seen that model happen really well in other countries.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sophie.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I think having the right partners, having the companies, having the investors, having the maybe a local city council, or so it's about, again, very local side. So if you have the right partners in the same surroundings, something will definitely happen there. And again, taking it step by step and not rolling out a big solution at one time. Yeah, it's about finding those places.
Okay, so slow and steady is
Yes.
the message
Right.
I'm getting
Yeah.
from you. We're going to leave it there. Panel,
Great.
Sophie, Scott, and Andrew, thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank
Thank you.